Hello, I'm Lucy. I'm one of the trainers at Neurokinex.
I'm Morgan. I'm also one of the trainers here at Neurokinex Gatwick. So I guess today we're going to obviously come to talk about obviously what we do here in terms of the Neuro Rehab, give a bit of background about ourselves, what some of the general benefits that you can get from exercise if you do have a neurological condition, and in particular a spinal cord injury. And then we're going to look at demonstrating some exercises that you can do at home just to kind of help actually avoid any kind of shoulder injuries and kind of improve hopefully your function or anything like that, independence that you might want to improve, obviously with the equipment you have at home. We're going to try and divide it into high-level injuries and lower-level injuries. So obviously we're aware that you might need a bit more assistance with some of them, so we'll try and divide into those two and kind of go from there. So I guess we'll start with an introduction. So obviously, like we said, we're from the Gatwick Centre. We do have two other centres. So the first of our centres used to be in Watford, which is now in Hempstead. So they started back in 2013. And then the Gatwick Centre opened when I started here in 2016. And then I believe a couple of years later, we opened our Bristol branch. So there's three at the moment, with potential for more maybe in the future around the UK. So our backgrounds in terms of trainers who work here are multidisciplinary. So we have a mixture of physios, occupational therapists, sports scientists, sports rehabbers and therapists, and exercise physiologists and strength and conditioning coaches. And then a little bit further on, we'll kind of explain obviously what the benefits are of having that team together. And similar across the three centres as well in terms of that mixture as well. In terms of what we do, obviously, like I mentioned, is neuro rehabilitation. So we kind of assist with all neurological injuries and kind of presentations. So in terms of spinal cord injuries, we have people who are very high level injury in terms of potential on a ventilator, all the way down to people with lower lumbar injury, with potentially walking ability. So it's a wide spectrum. And then other aspects of, say, stroke in either form, brain injuries, and then more obscure presentations, maybe like Guillain-Barré and kind of anything in between. We'll always try and cater our rehabilitation towards everyone's needs. In terms of what we do here, there's kind of three main separate components within the neuro rehab that we do. The first is ABR, or activity-based rehab. We'll kind of touch on that a bit later on. That's kind of one of the sections that are adapted for people with neurological injuries. We have our wide pulse stimulation sessions, so those utilising the muscle stimulation devices that we have as part of the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation network that we're a part of, and also the locomotor training that we do on our kind of specialised treadmill at the Gatwick Centre at the moment. So a mixture of those kind of formats kind of help us. So initially when we have an assessment with a new client, we'll kind of be guided more towards one of those three pathways, obviously alongside what their goals are to kind of assist and kind of look to achieve what they want to, alongside what our kind of specialities are as well. So that's a kind of background as well. We also kind of facilitate more neuro rehab for our paediatric side of things as well. So our centre with a dedicated kind of space upstairs, soft play area for obviously tailoring more of that neuro rehab towards what kids need. Obviously downstairs, big metal equipment, it's not the most kid-friendly area, whereas upstairs in the kind of soft play area with equipment and anything that kind of makes it a bit more fun, especially for the younger kids that we see as well. And we have the same other centres in terms of similar setups, and we'll kind of, again, try and tailor it to the person in front of us. Obviously, we're human more than anything, so we try and make it about them and make it as fun as possible, but also stick to the principles of neuro rehab that we kind of that we follow as well. So I guess Lucy can kind of cover some of the more general benefits of exercise with the clients that we see now.
Yeah, so there are loads of different benefits, especially for people with spinal cord injuries, that are often slightly different to how an able-bodied person might respond to exercise. So you can have loads of benefits both physically as well as mentally, but the main physical attributes, you get an increase in bone density. So when lots of people become newly injured, They can have kind of risks with that low bone density from being sitting in a wheelchair all day or having to be in hospital for such a long time. So you can have that risk of osteoporosis or osteoarthritis through the not being able to weight bear very much. So doing exercise, which encourages you getting into various positions where you're weight bearing through your various limbs, and as well as using like vibration plates and getting that stimulus to the bones to encourage the bone growth, really helps to reduce the risk of like fractures or anything like that. And that's what we try and do a lot here, is we get people out of their chairs and we get them standing, get them weight bearing in different positions to try and encourage that bone density. But if people do come in and they have been injured for a long time and their bone density is low, we kind of cater for that as well. So we try and avoid positions that might create some shearing forces, where you have kind of lateral leaning and that can cause any like fractures or anything like that. So we avoid all of that and still find ways to load the bones in a more like one plane to try and still get that load density loading through the bones, as well as whilst we do any exercise. It also increases your cardiovascular endurance. So we do lots of different like circuits here. I know obviously with those who have slightly higher level injuries, getting that type of stimulus in is quite difficult for endurance purposes. Like getting the breath in and the breath out can be quite difficult. So we try and do lots of activities where we can get you in different positions, doing circuits, doing skier, can bike, where we get that blood kind of pumping your heart rate up a little bit to try and help improve all those physiological attributes that come with endurance training. And then we also try and promote muscle hypertrophy, so building muscles to get people nice and strong, and we're trying to prevent any atrophy of muscles that you might see from being in a chair or so we try and maintain that muscle bulk. So we do strength training, or we do lots of different positions like body weight training, just to try and keep the muscles healthy and keep them nice and strong, and trying to prevent any sort of muscle wasting, which can then cause problems later down the line as you get older, and like moving around, keeping your body as healthy as you can be from the start. And then we also like to try and improve people's upright tolerance. So sitting in your chair all day can kind of encourage blood pressure issues, especially if you're newly injured. You can kind of experience orthostatic hypertension, so low blood pressure, which can cause issues if you're then trying to stand, and you can feel dizzy and lightheaded. So we try and do as much standing as we can to try and build up that tolerance and get the blood pumping through the whole body, so it doesn't like to pool in the legs and starts to come back up, and we get a full flow through the body. And that can really help improve over time your tolerance to standing, so that you can then move on and do exercises whilst you're standing, as well as in all the other positions that we do. And then it kind of goes without saying, but also doing exercise is great for your mood, it's great for your affect, it makes you feel positive about you know, I know it always feels like a bit of a chore to do, but after having gotten out and about, seeing other people, can really help just mentally keep going. So yeah.
So we're going to maybe outline what I mentioned before about the activity-based rehab. So essentially what this is kind of like the base level session that we kind of offer for clients who attend here. So essentially what it is an adapted session for someone with a neurological injury. So almost kind of like I guess like a personal training session that's been tailored to the person in front. So with us, it's always a one-to-one session. It will never be yourself sharing a trainer at that time with another client. And then again, with the setup that we have, our centres, we're kind of assisted by placement students as well. So for the most part, you then maybe have them to assist, especially with kind of exercise and sessions that may be a bit more demanding and need a bit more help. It's always useful to have that extra set of hands. So in terms of the goals of the sessions themselves, so obviously, like we mentioned before, the initial assessments are really good to outline what these goals might be. It might be, for some people, it might be going back to walking. It might be, for some people, being able to transfer from their chair onto another surface. For some people, it might be being able to use their hands more. But it's good at the start to kind of get a good overview of what clients are looking to achieve, and then breaking that down into manageable kind of like chunks. So for us, we kind of look to do reassessments pretty much every 3 months. Obviously, it differs depending on how frequently some people come. But again, we can then set kind of mini targets within that. And then with our reassessments, obviously look to see that progression towards those goals, whether it's with muscle strength, whether it's with the kind of spinal cord injury specific like testing that we do, in terms of the battery of tests we use, again, are kind of more suited to the population that we see. So it means that the results we're getting are more applicable to what people are likely to want to achieve as well. So all that kind of gives a bit of structure to sessions. And then obviously some of the things that we're going to talk about in terms of the secondary issues, apart from the spinal cord injury themselves, that Lucy's kind of touched on in terms of blood pressure and that, are kind of run parallel of what we want to do. So the main two kind of goals in terms of ABI in general is to, if someone is wheelchair bound, to kind of get them out of their chair. Although we understand that an hour or 2 hours a day might not undo the many hours that someone might be in a chair, it's a good way to kind of take them out of that space they might affiliate with being in all the time and into a new kind of setup that is obviously going to be unusual for them compared to what they're normally in. So again, it's good for them to be out of that position where they might not be as supported and kind of still challenge them further. So for a lot of people, just being outside of their chair might be a challenge in itself. So separating yourself from that and getting you to work more rather than just getting you to do a full workout in your chair. For some things, it might be better to do it, but for the most part, we'd always look to get you out of your chair for the majority of the session, if not all. And then, like Lucy touched upon, that weight bearing is really key as well. So whether it's various positions of kneeling, in standing, whatever that is, obviously taking into account possible bone density issues, like Lucy mentioned. These are all things that we look to achieve as the main kind of focal point, and then any exercise will be done in those positions. So I guess, yeah, the goal is really add some structure to that. If we touch upon maybe some of the secondary issues. So with wheelchair users, for a lot of the time, just because the positioning of wheelchairs are meant to be supportive, it does mean that just through habit alone and having that extra support, it means that in terms of what the research shows is that wheelchair users are more likely to get shoulder injury just because of positioning. So if I kind of show you from the side, from this position with a wheelchair user, you're more likely to be in this position. So what you're doing, you're kind of closing the shoulder down and being in that position where you're more likely to push forward and close the shoulder down rather than pulling back and bringing out your chest and kind of opening it up. What happens is progressively over time is that shoulder becomes more accustomed to being in a closed position, whereas the structures around there aren't used to being in like that. So all the kind of tendons and muscles around that area tend to kind of move in different directions that aren't so nice, and you start to get possible issues such as like impingement and kind of just not so nice kind of what's called musculoskeletal issues around that area. So again, these are things that we want to kind of address, because if someone's working on transfers and they start to have shoulder issues because of, for the majority, it's going to be overuse injuries, that's something that's going to hold them back, because they're not going to be able to practice their transfers as much or be able to do it as much, or depending on the people, which for a lot of people that come here, the main focus for everyone will be independence. So a lot of what we'll do will be trying to address the balance. So speaking about that movement as well, a lot of people will be used to pushing forward, they very rarely pull back to the point where they're actually using the back muscles as well. So a lot of the time we'll work on what's called rowing exercises, so kind of pulling towards the body to address the issues that are caused by overuse of pushing away from the body. And again, looking to open out the chest in order to undo also address the balance of the shoulder being closed down for most of the time. So again, we're kind of just putting people in the best position so that when they do other types of core exercise that we put them in, they're going to be able to do it, and it also obviously offsets any potential injury. It's almost like injury prevention in that way as well. Like I said, we'd always try and guide us in terms of what our perspective is and what we should, what we think in our kind of professional opinion would be a good goal to work towards. I think it's that balance between not having a goal that's too easy, because you may achieve, we might set, say, a 3-month target and you achieve it in 2 weeks. You might think, well, I didn't really push myself. And then if it's too hard, some people might like be demotivated because they feel like they've let themselves down or haven't really pushed themselves as hard. So it's a fine line between the two. But in terms of ABI, yeah, we'd always look to kind of utilize those two main focal points and exercise around there. And then sometimes we may utilize, like I mentioned, the muscle stim as well, depending on what the goals are. But again, it depends on the frequency of sessions and things like that in terms of what we would kind of look to achieve. But that's kind of similar for everyone who attends here as well. So I guess following on from that point, we can maybe show you some exercises that you can do at home to kind of address some of the issues that we've just mentioned that might occur, especially around the shoulder and even the elbow and the wrist as well. So I think we kind of split them up into kind of two kind of categories in terms of maybe high level injury where you might need a bit more assistance, and low level where it might be just the initial setup or anything like that that might need a bit more help. Okay.
Cool. So yeah, so Morgan mentioned a lot of our the issues that we want to try and address is the shoulder and keeping the shoulder nice and healthy, so that in the long run we've got nice shoulders to keep moving and keep going on about your daily life as well as during sessions. So a really easy way of doing this is if you grab yourself a resistance band. They're really super easy to get a hold of and can be used in like loads and loads of different ways. So these for you to try at home. You can try and you can wrap it, either have a person or you can wrap the band around a door frame or around something sturdy so that this won't go anywhere. And we'll start with, if you're a T level, we'll start here. All the actions, like Morgan said, we want to eliminate all this rounding. We want to open up the chest. So you're going to work on like exercises where you're rowing like this. So you're starting nice and forwards, holding onto the handles or to the resistance band you've got, and then you're pulling yourself back. So you feel your shoulders kind of retract together, and then your arms and elbows are coming back away from you and then coming forwards. And doing around, you could like to try and do around 12 to 15 of these and then have a break in between, or do another exercise and then come back to it and do it 2 or 3 times can really help just promote that opposite. Because if we spend all day like this, giving the opportunity to just open you up a little bit and bring that exercise and the strength of those back muscles will really help keep you with a nice straight posture. So yeah, first starting with the rows, and then if we were a C-level client, if you have access to active hands, or if you can wrap the band around you, even sink a little bit lower in your chair so you're not likely to fall forwards, or have someone with you that can kind of block, and then from here you're just going to pull there, and you can kind of gauge the resistance as to how easy or hard you can get from. And you don't necessarily need to go full range, just try and work with what you've got, and then as you get stronger and as you get more used to the movement, you can kind of gauge from there how much resistance you need. So that's the first really good one. A second one is nice and easy, but you're going to row towards the side. So this is more shoulder extension, and you're working slightly different muscles in your back to try and help encourage a nice complete picture really. So we're not just focusing on the top and the traps around here, we're focusing more on lats as well around here. So you're just going to start, same applies, so you kind of interchange between the two if you need to. You're just going to start here, and then you're going to row back, so that rather than the first time you're up here, you want your elbows and your wrists to come nice and straight through and kind of landing at your hips. So you come forwards again, and then straight through like this. And then same applies if you have active hands, or if you can wrap it round, and then sink further down, or have someone hold you and kind of go past you, if you're in your chair, past where your wheels come in, and bring it in like that. And then same applies, 12 to 15 can really help try and keep that good shoulder health. Also, what's really great just at the end of the day, or if you're first thing in the morning, is trying to stretch and open yourself up here in the morning or in the evening. So even if it's lying on your bed, you can put like a pillow round either down your spine, or you have someone help you, just try and stretch you out this way and really promote as much stretch as you can through your pecs and your chest to try and eliminate that rounding and really help you stop you from getting quite so tight within here. Yeah, and then the last one I'll mention now is a bit more of a focusing on your scapular rhythm, so making sure that what can quite often happen with overuse injuries is you'll get you might be great in one range, but if you get further down to a different range, you kind of get a blockage or anything like that. So you want to try and keeping an awareness of what your scapular rhythm normally feels like, and if it feels slightly off, or if you can try and improve it. So a really easy way of doing this is having someone, either yourself can hold it up, or you have someone hold it here for you, and you kind of want to work it across 4 different planes. So you want to work it forwards, then you want to try and work it down as far as you can. I'm wearing a black jumper, so it's quite hard to see, but down here, and then pushing yourself as back as far as you can, and then up. So you're kind of making a square with your shoulder, and you want to keep the movement as slow and as easy as you can, and kind of working through that range to try and keep your shoulder as healthy as possible. so that we don't hit any blockages or anything like that. So yeah, and then just repeating that on both sides, having help where you need to make sure you're hitting the right goals really. And yeah, those are some quick and easy ones that we can try from home.
Yeah, I think that's everything. So obviously, if what we understand, obviously, we're doing loads of different neurological presentation conditions. Obviously, it needs like a more tailored approach. So we always encourage people to reach out to us, or obviously whatever profession that might be have access to obviously seek that rehab. For a lot of people, it's crucial to get that independence. But I think obviously some of the things that we touched upon would be kind of what we'd give as clients here as part of like a home exercise program. That wouldn't necessarily be a part of the sessions themselves, just because we like to do tasks and exercise they may not be able to do at home, just because it makes more sense. Whereas with this would be more of a challenge that we would set for in between sessions to make sure that we've touched upon before, kind of keeping the shoulders nice and healthy in the best position, so that when we do exercises here, whether it's standing, whether it's weight work or resistance work, anything like that, people are in the best possible position.